From lunch cuts to job cuts to tax cuts and potential Māori wards and council cuts. The coalition government's relentless focus to achieve outcomes and deliver tax cuts has some questioning the approach and impacts to many New Zealanders. So to discuss, joining us now is the Green Party co-leader Marama Davidson. Welcome back to the hui. Let's start with the 9-point plan announced by the Prime Minister today. A 75% cut in people in emergency housing, 20,000 fewer victims of violent crime, 50,000 fewer people on job seeker support benefit. That's a good thing, isn't it?
We can actually go back to what does this government care about? What do our people, whānau and communities care about? How are we going to support people to live good lives while we're slashing public services, all the services and the agencies that we're going to actually need to step up? How can we achieve that, Julian?
I understand that point, but let me come back to the point that I made around those key things, right? The cut in people in emergency housing, fewer victims of violent crime, job support benefit.
You could make people homeless and achieve that cut, right? You could achieve that target. So that target of fewer people in emergency housing, by evicting them, what sort of a target is that? By actually making more, and it's mainly our people and particularly young people who will be impacted on that target, you could actually achieve that target by doing a really perverse and shameful thing. So you could have more homelessness, but have less people in emergency housing, Julian. So the targets are shallow, they don't come with a plan. And how can we want to improve people's lives while we are slashing benefit amounts, the amounts of income support people can receive? While we are doing that, how do we expect people to live better lives who are already struggling?
OK, let me raise another point then. We talked about lunch cuts in the introduction that I made, right? Show me the evidence that there are tangible outcomes from having lunch in schools for tamariki.
Go and talk to any of those schools like I have. Go and talk to the principals, the teachers, the children and their families, Julian. Just the goal of not having tamariki go hungry is a goal that we should be proud of. And when I have visited with schools who have said, my mum and dad, the kids have said, my mum and dad work so hard, this helps our family, this makes sure that I'm going to get a good kai every day. That in itself is a good kaupapa for us as a country, wouldn't we think?
Yeah, but the
government also has other benefits in learning, and teachers and principals have told us that very clearly.
Sure, but the government's response to that is always low attendance rates in schools, not getting the high enough achievement, certainly by international comparisons, which they have talked about right through the election campaign up to the present day.
Blaming that on school lunches? How dare they?
No, I'm talking about education achievement.
No, that's
right?
what I mean.
It's relentlessly focused on outcomes.
Yes, and making sure that children are fed. Absolutely, the teachers have said can and does lead to better attendance, having more concentration in schools. So the governments are what they are. What they're actually doing is scrambling for money to fund their tax cuts to landlords. So this is, Julian, this is people who already have enough, and they're stealing school lunches off of tamariki to give more money to landlords who already have more than enough, Julian. That's just shameful and sad.
The government would say, in fact, many people would say, actually, that you have taken that to the nth degree.
Me?
Right? Yeah, they're saying they're giving tax cuts to all New Zealanders, not just their rich mates. They're saying that people, that New Zealanders deserve a tax cut.
Why do any rich mates need a tax cut? The Green Party campaigned in 2023 on ending poverty for all whānau and tamariki. We can actually make the decision to do that. Why do I need a tax cut, Julian? Why do any people who are already wealthy and are living comfortably need a tax cut when so many thousands of whānau are struggling every single day?
You make a really good point.
I do.
You talk about your election campaign. At the end, you lost, they won. They were very clear about what they were going to do. They said they were going to give tax cuts. They said pretty much what they were going to do to ensure that they could give tax cuts to New Zealanders. And they've said, we won, and this is what we're doing to achieve that outcome for all New Zealanders, not just their rich mates.
While they are hammering the people who are already struggling. So we have seen them pulling support away from disabled people. We have seen them killing off Te Aka Whaiora, the Independent Māori Health Authority. We have seen them removing Auahi Kore and anti-smoking health legislation. So while they are doing making harmful decisions for all of these communities, they are also scrambling to find the money to pay rich people tax cuts. And I know, Julian, that the reason why the Green Party did the best we have ever done in history, have got the most MPs we've ever achieved, is because people resonated and saw our solution, our plan to actually end poverty, give more people, low-income and middle-income families, more money in their pockets.
How come that hasn't motivated people to take to the streets? How come that hasn't motivated the types of protests that we saw initially after this government was elected? And yes, I know there's been hui amotu and the like, particularly from Māori and Māori communities, but how come we haven't seen the groundswell of support for what you're talking about and negativity against the government if, as it is, and as you said, it's as bad as it is?
I actually think we are seeing the groundswell of support, not just on the streets, but on the streets, absolutely on the streets, for te tiriti, for ending violence against Gaza, for the cuts that are being made in health and in school, education, lunch cuts. We are seeing people who have never felt like they've cared about politics are feeling concerned about this, and I think that's the opportunity we have, Julian. So whether or not people are all there yet, we can use this opportunity. This government is just throwing out cannon after cannon, and we can use that.
Sure. There's also the prospect, though, that MPs could get a pay rise very soon. If that's the case, will you take it?
I think it's a bad look. While slashing the incomes of those on the lowest income, so benefit cuts, while taking school lunches off families who really appreciate them and need them, I think it's a bad look, and no one should be happy that MPs are going to get a pay rise. And what we need to be doing is instead putting in place the plans to make sure families get the support that they need. The Greens had that plan, and that's what we should be supporting.
OK, I want to talk about Darlene Tana. There is an investigation. It's been about 4 weeks since she was suspended. Where is this investigation at, and why is it taking so long?
The investigation was always going to be careful to make sure, robust and careful to make sure it does what it needs to do, which is talk to the right people. And we don't apologise for the investigation taking too long. It's taking as long as we said it would, which was at least 2 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks.
Because I hear careful and I hear delayed. And this is a wahine Māori, a whanaunga of ours, yours and mine, actually,
absolutely,
who came into Parliament. And I hear delayed, and I hear just as delayed is just as denied.
Not delayed. The investigation was always going to take about a month, and so it's winding down. It's been talking to people. People have been interviewed. That is just being pulled together in the, I guess, recommendations, findings of the report, and that's happening right now, Julian. So we know we are coming towards the end of that independent investigation.
When will we see the release of that? Because there are people who ask questions of the former leadership, and you are still a part of the leadership now, about how much you knew before it was made public about the things that have happened. So when are we going to hear the report, and why, if you knew things were happening before it got to this stage, how it's taken longer than it should have, surely?
I think one thing I want to be really clear on here is when the public have the right to know something, we will always front up with that. What we also need to protect is, I guess, a fair process. As anyone in the public eye can tell you, as soon as even a whisper of an accusation, whether it's true or not, is out in the public, that whānau and community get hammered. That's unnecessary. I think it's right to independently investigate it, and when we need to be transparent about anything, we will, and we've shown that. That's what happened with Golries.
You said about a month, so next week?
That's up to the investigator, but yes, about a month from when she started.
Marama tēnā koe.
Kia ora.
Really appreciate your time.
Kia ora, Julian.
That was Marama Davidson, co-leader of the Green Party.